The world's most famous anti-tank weapon would have to be the RPG, but most don't know it's not a Russian invention at all. Like so many great military inventions, it has Nazi origins. The Soviets see in the undeniable genius of the Panzerfaust concept, a small disposable anti-armour rocket, with the Germans producing 8 million across all variants by war's end, cheap to produce and highly effective. The Soviets capturing many Panzerfausts and redistributing them among their forces. There were 5 primary models during the Second World War, with the most common being the Panzerfaust 60. The number at the end of the model denotes its effective range in metres, firing a 3 kg warhead in a rainbow-like trajectory, but quite a small range, requiring troops to be extremely close. Later models would have greater ranges, Panzerfaust 150 having more than double the muzzle velocity of the most common 60-metre variant, and almost twice the effective range, but this time with a pointed warhead instead of a domed, with an improved explosive charge and a significantly better penetration. But the real wonder weapon was the Panzerfaust 250, this time reloadable with a pistol grip and was fired over the shoulder compared to under the arm, and looking near identical to today's RPG, and almost double the muzzle velocity of the 100-metre variant, capable of piercing 400mm of steel, purposely designed to deal with heavier and heavier Russian tanks, while keeping the shooter at a safe distance with the opportunity for multiple shots. Even with plans for multiple ammunition variations, a Splitterfaust or fragmentation head for anti-personnel use, with the theoretically working to down low-flying aircraft, a thermobaric warhead known as thermite for urban use. The Soviets using captured models to aid development of the RPG-1, but never being put into service or mass production, then later the RPG-2, with mass production only beginning in the 1950s. Then finally the world famous RPG-7, which was finally delivered to the Soviet Army in 1961, the weapon initially costing around $350 to produce, with ammunition costing around $100 to $500, with Soviets making a great alteration to the warhead, adding stabilizing fins, hugely increasing range and accuracy. Changing the modern battlefield by infantry no longer waiting for vulnerable slow-moving anti-tank guns or waiting for air support, 3 men with RPGs could ambush a tank column causing serious damage, creating asymmetric warfare with a maximum effective range against stationary targets of 500 metres, giving infantry the ability to cause havoc from great distances. After the initial launch and the integral rocket motor igniting after 10 metres, achieving a velocity of around 300 metres per second. With first use in Egypt and the Vietnam War in 1967, its relatively small back blast compared to larger anti-tank weapons meant that it was more nimble and could be fired from inside buildings or tight alleyways, making it difficult for armoured vehicles like the M113, even with their high mobility, also with the Americans using their new tactic of leapfrogging infantry, with helicopters but being highly vulnerable near the landing sites. In Vietnam alone, 128 Hueys were involved, completely destroyed by RPG fire. Effect on morale. During the First Chechen War in 1994 to 96, the urban fighting being so fierce that Russian conscripts coming under such heavy fire were too scared to get out of their BTR-80s armoured personnel carriers and succumbing to RPG fire. The Soviets greatly lacking behind Nazi Germany, and even the British and Americans with handheld anti-armour capabilities such as Panzerfaust or Panzerschrecks, which was a copy of the American bazooka, an adaptation of a recoilless rifle. The Soviets at this time still trying to use large caliber anti-tank guns, such as the PTRD-41, with large grenades to little effect, with initial development of the RPG-1 in 1944, too late in the war to put into mass production and service. The undeniable brilliance of the Panzerfaust, with its disposable nature and easy production compared to the bazooka, with a significantly higher manufacturing cost and time. Just under 500,000 bazookas were produced during the war, compared to the 8 million Panzerfausts across all variants. Did the Panzerfaust have the positive effect on the outcome of the war the Nazis were hoping for? While that figure is rather hard to get precise and accurate data for, but the effectiveness could vary hugely, with later years of the war combined with urban fighting, hugely increased its lethality. One comprehensive analysis puts the figure around 750 US and Commonwealth tanks suffering losses, just under 7% of their total force. In the Battle of Normandy, 6% of British tank losses were to Panzerfaust, and that number rising to 34% for British forces east of the Rhine in the last 3 months of the war. This is likely down to the fact that the Germans had less anti-tank guns and tanks themselves combined with close quarters fighting. While the numbers for the Eastern Front are much harder to gather, some estimates put Soviet losses at less than 1%, but rising to 18% in the Battle of Berlin. It is also important to point out that these both are for tank kills being completely destroyed, or the tanks suffering mechanical failure and becoming non-operational. Much later, in the 1960s, the US would invent the Stinger missile, a man-portable infrared homing surface-to-air missile, to provide forward, short-range air defense for ground troops, giving them protection from airborne threats such as helicopters and low-flying fixed-wing aircraft. Quite the advancement from a small 1-metre tube lobbing a 3-kilogram warhead just 60 metres. Fast forward to today's conflict in Ukraine, with Western-supplied NLAW and Javelin weapon systems extremely effective against Russian tanks, with one widely cited report from March of 2022 stated that out of 300 javelins fired, 280 Russian vehicles were destroyed, that being a 93% kill rate. Even since then, there has been a change in tactics, with recent analysis from February 2025 suggests that the FPV drone now accounts for the number one tank killer, making up 64% of Russian armoured vehicle losses, mainly due to the lower manufacturing cost and the ability to strike beyond the operator's eyesight, with fibre optic drones able to go to fortified positions. Western fire and forget launcher systems have the benefit of a safe black blast compared to the lethal RPG and Panzerfaust, with it being too dangerous for users to fire indoors, down alleyways and confined spaces. In summary, the RPG was never the solely Soviet design once thought to be, but a greatly improved Panzerfaust and Panzafaust family of weapons, going on to be one of the world's most infamous weapons.